Hey, Christine, is your internet working good out there?
For the time being,
All right. Well,
I
your video looks great. Your sound's good.
yeah, well, we got a cell phone booster, so
Nice. Christine,
we'll
is
see.
your internet working good out there?
For the time being,
All right. Well,
I
your video looks great. Your sound's good.
yeah, well, we got a cell phone booster,
Nice.
so
Christine,
we'll
is
see.
your internet working good out there? All right. I think that was
Video
like,
being.
all right. Well,
I
your video looks great. Your sound's good. All
yeah,
right. How do we
well,
turn that off?
cell phone booster,
Troy,
Nice.
so
Troy.
we'll see.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'm live streaming to YouTube
Alright,
right
I
now,
think
which
that
I think
was-
why we're getting the feedback.
All right.
Oh, well, you got to minimize your. Did you open up a new browser? Can you shut that one down?
Booster.
Okay, hold on.
Someone's watching it or something. Yeah, sorry.
So I'm live streaming to YouTube right now, which I think why we're getting the feedback.
Oh, well, you got to minimize your. Did you open up a new browser? Can you shut that one down?
Booster.
Okay, hold on.
Someone's watching. There we go.
Woo.
Hey, I thought we had a new looper.
Oh my gosh, you guys, we're choking that up to the new girl air. Apologize for that.
I mean,
Now
it was
I
a
know what I
great-
did wrong. That was really crazy.
It
Sorry.
was a great conversation.
Sorry.
Wow.
It was
Did I? And I stepped away for a little bit. I'm sorry.
no, okay. Troy, if you could check to make sure we're still live streaming on YouTube. I believe we are. And
Oh, we are. It's got the thing up top. Yeah, the thing up
Okay,
top. It just yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's a way to wake up tonight.
It's my
Yeah.
internet. Blame my
So,
internet.
Yeah, so as long as everybody's not watching it on YouTube while we're doing the Zoom meeting, we should be fine.
Yeah, like the city clerk. Yes, I am. Close that off.
That's good, Kelly. We're all learning the technology of this stuff.
Yes. I don't know how long I get to use the new girl card, but I'm going to use it tonight.
You get like one more council meeting. and then-
Okay. All right.
No way, 6 months.
Oh, was it 6 months?
Oh,
All right.
I'll take it.
The problem is she's not new. She did a lot in Mill Creek, so you're not really new, Kelly.
He's new to
Oh,
us.
Kim,
so
you're right. You're right. Kim knows me from Mill Creek days, so I can't get away with that.
Oh, what happened to your ex-mayor? Good grief. Two
Yeah,
mayors in the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Wow. Hope she's okay.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Hey, Marcus, we're missing your lovely face. We need some light on you.
Well, I don't know how to get any more light on me. So I'm here in the flesh. That's about as good as you're going to get.
Perfect.
Are we seeing Councilmember Ewing here? Is he on? I know he's been struggling with that, trying to get his laptop to connect with Zoom, and we've pushed out the application to him, but I don't see him showing up here yet.
Yeah, Gary's going to be joining here in a minute, but I don't see Steve.
Yes, Steve.
He's the iPad. Steve, are you with us?
Time to use the old text message here.
Yeah.
If Troy, if you would get him on board, in the meantime, we'll start this meeting. And
We're good.
so tonight is Tuesday, August 25th, 2020 at 7 p.m. And this is going to be the regular city council meeting for the city of Lake Stevens. This meeting is being done via Zoom, both video and call in. And at this time, I will call this meeting to order. And we'll start it out with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would stand, and we got a flag there behind Jean. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, thank you. Couple people in the waiting room. Do we have Steve on yet?
I haven't, I sent him a text. I haven't heard back from him yet. I can try to call him.
Mayor, you're the host of the meeting now,
Okay.
unless you'd like to give it back to me if you'd like.
No, I got it. Thank you, though.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So with that, Kelly, if we could get a, this is Kelly's first city council meeting, right?
I was on the special one on the 11th, but
But the real one. So for those of you who don't know, we have a new city clerk.
hi guys.
And it's Kelly up there in the left-hand corner. of
Kelly.
the screen.
Hey.
And this is her first meeting, so we're cutting her a little bit of slack, not a lot.
No more looping. Yes. Yes, sir.
So with that, Kelly, can you get us a roll call, please?
Sure. Councilmember Daughtry,
Here,
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
Here?
Councilmember Frederick,
Here.
Councilmember Dixon,
Here.
Councilmember Jorstad,
Here.
They're
Council-
taking a roll call right now.
Councilmember Ewing.
He's waiting in the waiting room. Can you let him in? He's on his
I got him.
iPad.
Okay.
Oh, looks like he's
There he
connecting.
goes.
Mayor Ewing, are you here? Mayor Ewing, I'm sorry. Councilmember Ewing, there's my second mistake, Mayor. I apologize. Councilmember Ewing
Present.
and Councilmember Taggett.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you very much. If I can get everyone to mute themselves, I'm getting some motorcycles and a lot of background noise. So if you can mute yourself, I'd appreciate it. And with that, Council President Taggett, can you give us an agenda, please?
If everyone's had a chance to review the agenda, can I get a motion on an approved agenda to get the evening started?
Move
So
to approve
moved.
the agenda.
Second.
I got a first, it looks like from Angie Jorstad, and a second from Kim Daughtry. Or can I get a second?
Second. Sean Frederick.
Okay, we got a first, second. Any discussion? Great. All in favor of approving the agenda as submitted?
aye.
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Mayor, you have an agenda.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much, President.
Mayor, can I make one clarification for the record before we get any further, Mayor and Council? There's one error, just a quick typo on consent agenda item F, the appointment of the salary commission members. In the body, the summary in the background of the staff report, third paragraph down, it says the mayor makes the following nominations for appointment to the Veterans Commission. That certainly should say Salary Commission and not Veterans Commission. So I just want to make that note.
Do we have the legal counsel to make sure that's okay to sidestep that? It seems pretty trivial and we've got it on record, but is there anything we need to do to redo that?
No, it's been recognized and you can certainly go ahead and proceed.
Great.
Thank you.
Mayor, we got an agenda for you.
Great, thank you very much. We have no guest business tonight, but we do have citizens' comments. And how we do citizens' comments in the Zoom world of Zoom is I'll look for a hands up, or if you say your name, I'll call your name and then give you 3 minutes to have your citizens' comments. We ask that you say your name and your address and stick to 3 minutes. And with that, are there any citizens' comments for tonight? Christine Egelstad.
Okay, Christine Eaglestad. Do I give my home address or my business address? I don't know.
Whichever one you feel comfortable with.
All right. 8919 131st Avenue Northeast in Lake Stevens. I had read on the agenda that there would be discussion on the full-time versus part-time mayor. I also was on the Brett Gailey chat for the chamber. Angie Jorstad was on there and answered some questions that I had. And I appreciate that good insight. I just wanted to, I guess, go on record to say that I am in support of going on for a full-time mayor. I'm not a good public speaker, so I'm just going to read a little bit about a discussion I had with somebody online. And that is, we as a city unintentionally made the transition to a full-time mayor during John Spencer's leadership. Because he was retired, he was technically part-time, but worked the position full-time, much to the benefit of Lake Stevens. When we were a little city, part-time made sense, but now that we are in excess of 30,000 citizens and are looking at absorbing some more of unincorporated parts of the city, that population will increase as well. And we're on the big growth path of bringing in more and going after probably some federal funds, working on the highways. And I know Brett was championing trying to get some better internet service for many of the residents. I think that would be beneficial to the city to have the accessibility and have whatever mayor in the future is governing the city, that accessibility to the citizens and me as a business owner when they are looking to expand.
Great, Christine. Thank you for your comments. And let's go to, I have Earl and Robin.
This is Earl. I also want to speak on the full-time mayor.
Earl, can you give us your full name, address, please?
Sure. Earl Gray, and address is 2505 Meadow Drive, Lake Stevens. In commenting on the transition to a full-time mayor, we elected a mayor that knew the requirements and had a full-time job when elected. We're 7 months into that term and the job hasn't changed at all. We're also in uncertain times, especially financially. None of us know exactly what's going to happen with the income to the city. And we shouldn't be adding costs to the city at this time. And we should also wait until people get to weigh in on this, because when the election happened, it was very clear what we were electing for, and it isn't now. Also, it would give people who might consider running for mayor, if they knew it was a full-time career and with a full-time salary, the option to do that. We didn't actually vote for any of this. So I'm in favor of waiting until people get to vote on it and people get to discuss it in an election before we substantially increase the mayor's salary. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Earl. And then I have Robin McGee.
Hi, yeah, we actually didn't coordinate, believe it or not. Our points are a little bit the same. So my name is Robin McGee, Lake Stevens resident. So I did submit some comments online. I want to follow up on in person for the public to hear what my thoughts are and my reasoning. And also to clarify something that was mentioned in the last meeting, I was not able to attend. So while I do understand we're a growing city, I feel it would be irresponsible for the council to move forward with changing the mayoral position to full-time with a full-time salary at this, like right now. There are three major reasons why I see why I have this opinion. So first one is switching from a part-time to full-time position in the middle of the current mayor's term is not what the voters thought they were voting on during last year's election. It's impossible to identify how many other qualified candidates we might have had for this position had it been advertised as a full-time job with a full-time salary to match. In fact, several people did mention this to me as I was out canvassing last year. something to the effect of, it's unfortunate that you have to be rich in order to run for office, which I, disagree with, but I also, I disagree that you have to be rich to be able to do it, but that was sort of the idea, is that it takes a lot of time, and people who don't need a full-time salary are the only people who could do the job. Second reason is it would be irresponsible for the council to decide to pay someone much, much more than an already agreed upon amount of salary for a specific term. Like, I worked at Amazon for a long time, hiring manager, we paid people, we put out an offer for how much we were going to pay somebody. If they took it for that amount, then that's how much they got paid. No problem with moving to full time. But right now that wasn't the agreement. That's not what people thought they were voting on. Also, during this pandemic, I think it's irresponsible to increase the pay of anyone in the city right now. Boeing just laid off a lot of its workforce. Some of those are friends of mine who live in the city. If we have extra money in the coffers, I think we should direct it toward people who are struggling to put food on the table during this pandemic. And I think we should use maybe some of that to curb the pandemic so people can get back to work. Offices can reopen and that sort of thing. The thing that I do want to clarify, during the last meeting, the presenter of the research packet mentioned the food bank is supportive of a full-time mayor. And I had to take pause on that. So while I have no doubt that some community members who volunteer at the food bank or maybe are on the food bank board are supportive of having a full-time mayor, I'm sure that's true. I believe the statement was misleading, and it sounds as though the food bank board as a whole is supportive. I am on the food bank board, haven't missed a meeting, and I can confirm that we haven't discussed or voted on this issue. So I just wanted to clarify that for folks who are listening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Robin. Let's see how I turn this thing off. Okay, go. All right, Robin, thank you. Any other comments, citizens' comments? I have Sue. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sue Fernall, 8430 15th Street, Lake Stevens. My comment is, I'm going to say it and then it's in reference to a few things already said. I'm in favor of full-time mayor based on the city is growing in leaps and bounds. Mayor Spencer did not want to go full-time. He was happy in his position and he did run it as a full-time. But as we grow, and we all agree we're growing, the virus has created financial impact on businesses and people, the traffic, the sidewalks, the communication with the non-computer people. And what I mean by that is I'm a senior and I live in a senior park. We do not have communication until recently, where things are coming out from either the mayor or the city, which is fine, but people in my park do not have computers or internet. We need to increase that communication. Some of the new council people ran on that. I'd like to see more of that because we are being left out of what is happening, and people do not know about Zoom. They do not have computers. They cannot get online. I share with my neighbors, I post it on the board. The other thing is the mayor needs to be available. We all know the time it takes to put in. There's 2, 3, 4 people on this council that have been involved in Aquafest. One of the members took a month off. Myself, I had been retired at that time. It took tremendous amount of time. And that was an event that was just once a year. We're talking about daily, weekly, and monthly. The workloads for all of the staff have expanded. And my concern is, council, as you vote, to consider your vote on these position changes and not the person in it. 2 months ago, you voted an HR person up. Tonight, you're voting on another. Where I worked for the state, sometimes those positions had to open up. If we're looking at funding, we need to look at it across the board. We can't say that someone in public works or grounds works hard, they're taking on new duties. We agree with that, but everybody is stepping up. I believe that it's time to go to a full-time mayor and not so much the person in it, because if the person runs or doesn't run, that position then will be full-time, the same as these positions that have been upgraded. Those positions will remain as an upgraded position. And I know that from where I worked. I was involved in many upgrades. I received many upgrades. And when I left, my position was at the high level. I had been upgraded. So I would ask, please, council, to think of the position changes you have voted in the past and be consistent with your voting. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Sue. Appreciate it. And any other comments tonight? I'm not seeing any of their hands up. Is there anybody on the phone who wants to say their first name and be recognized? I'm not seeing any other hands or hearing anybody. Oh, I got Janice. Janice, go ahead. Let's unmute you first. There you go.
Thank you so much. I didn't know that this was the time to speak on this very important discussion. I was going to only add my comment at this point in the agenda to say thank you, Mayor and Council and Chief Dyer, for putting police on South Lake Stevens Road. It was it's been a very hard summer for us, for the people on this side of the lake. And I think that the speed and the accidents and the drama that has gone on at this end of the lake has been well quelched by having responsiveness. So thank you all. With that said, and with the comments that have come up so far in this meeting, here's my take on this, going through in my count 4 mayors since I entered this community, brought in by my husband, which you can all thank him for later. But by being privy to the inner workings of the city on my limited ability, we really have evolved. The time is here, and it's not just for the time or the person, which was said by the prior comments. It's more, in my opinion, for the accountability moving forward. We are moving into an era where we're going to need to make some big decisions, and there's going to need to be someone at the helm, working with council very closely, working with staff very closely, working with the volunteers very closely, that is accountable and willing to take on the responsibility of all of the things that happen in a changing world. I am not a Zoom. I spend my entire day in this office on Zoom, but I am not a Zoom person. I want to be back in a room with people, but right now we can't be, but things continue to move forward. And my concern is that we are making decisions now that are going to have ongoing repercussions if we don't grow up a little bit responsibly. So my comment right now is a compliment to the city. As a citizen, as a future citizen, I'm going to be annexed in, I hear, according to what's going on in future agendas. As a business owner, we really appreciate being able to reach out to people in play and have responsiveness. And then as someone that wants to continue to be proud of this community. So I'll leave that be. But thank you very much for my 3 minutes.
Thank you, Janice. Any other comments from citizens tonight? Looking for a raised hand. Any other comments from anybody on the phone? Okay, I'm seeing.
Hello.
What was that? Was that?
I think I just heard somebody.
Was there a comment from someone on the phone? I heard something.
That was probably me.
Oh, Stan?
No, it was probably me.
Okay. How about ending in 5123. Who's that?
Okay, this is Rochelle McDaniel.
Okay, great.
I first want to say thank you, Mayor and Council, for bringing back a full-time mayor to a
Rochelle,
vote.
Rochelle, I know you know the deal here. I need your first name.
Oh,
again.
I'm sorry. I have to say my name and everything, don't I? Rochelle McDaniel, 827 Stitch Road, Lake Stevens, Washington, 98258.
Great.
Okay, sorry. Again, thank you, Council and Mayor. As I said before, I'm really happy to hear that the discussion of full-time mayor has come back to Council, and I'm in favor of it. As a former council member, I know the amount of hours that former Mayor Spencer put into representing Lake Stevens, and he chose to be a part-time mayor, but to give full-time dedication to it. There's a discussion that we had all had in making the next mayoral position full-time, and it was put on the back burner. But as we're taking in all these annexations and the city's growing and we're no longer a small town, it is more important to make this decision now more than ever, especially with the annexations coming in. I think we've done a great job of growing and expanding our parks and finishing sidewalk projects and road projects that had been talked about for decades. And with the staff growing, I think it's more important than ever to have a full-time mayor. So I thank you for consideration. I hope that this is something that happens not only for the position of mayor in the future, but also for the people of Lake Stevens. I think we deserve it. Our neighboring cities also have full-time mayors, and they are growing, and it's been a great benefit to the community, to the business owners, and to their staff. So with that being said, thank you for allowing me the time.
Thank you, Rochelle. And then Sam Lowe, did you have comments?
Yeah, Sam Lowe, 11002 UCT Loop Road, Lake Stevens. I'm speaking as a resident of Lake Stevens. And I just want to say that in 2016, when I was council president, I approached Mayor Spencer just a few months after he was sworn into office. And I told him that we needed a full-time mayor and that would he consider being a full-time mayor. He agreed that we needed a full-time mayor, but he asked that I not bring it forward to the council. Had Mayor Spencer been interested in that, I would have brought it forward to the council. It would have been the council's decision whether to have a full-time mayor or not 4 years ago. So I bring it to our council members now. It's your decision to make. I don't want to steer you one way or another, other than to say that I think it's time for our city to have a full-time mayor so that we can be better represented in the Puget Sound Regional Council, Snohomish County Tomorrow, and many of the other things that are happening in our county, as well as being able to help our senior citizens and those in our community who have needs in the city. So I just wanted to share that quickly tonight, and I sure miss working with each one of you on a weekly basis. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. Any other comments tonight? Todd Welch.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As of the last couple of speakers have said, my name's Todd Welch. I live in Lake Stevens. I'm not going to give my exact address. As many people know, I served 8 years on the council, as some of the last members have. And Lake Stevens has essentially ran with a full-time mayor for the last 6+ years. Vern Little was a program manager at Boeing. Once Vern retired from Boeing, he still had a couple years left on his term, and he basically worked full-time. Then we moved to John, and John worked full-time after his retirement. So we've been working with full-time mayors, just paying them $1,500 a month only for the last 6 years. And we've seen a lot of progress with that. Having somebody go to these meetings is important. The other mayors don't care that you only come, that you have to take off from work or anything else. All the cities larger than us have a full-time mayor, every one of them. And 2 of them below us do, when it comes to size. So we do need to make this transition. I know the price is the one thing that I would be, the only thing hinky is that it is kind of bringing in a more money when we are definitely don't understand what's going to happen, especially with Boeing right now. But it's something we definitely need to take seriously. And if we don't do it now, we need to do it maybe as soon as the pandemic's over then, if that's what it's going to be. But it needs to be if I would still rather see it done now, because there's a lot going on and we need somebody there who's, if they're going to do the job full time, we're going to pay them full-time wage. And I think whether it's our current mayor or in the future, it'll be going on for the future for you. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Any other comments tonight? Are there any comments from anybody on the phone? Okay, I'm not hearing any. Okay, I'm not hearing any comments. I appreciate the comments. I'm going to close the citizens' comments portion of the meeting. And at this time, we'll do council business. President Tadgett.
Thank you. Why don't we start out with Councilmember Mary Dickinson?
Yes, thank you so much. I hope you can hear me okay. So regarding, I have two things I need to talk about tonight. Regarding the senior center and expected funding by the city of Lake Stevens, I would ask that we fulfill our, let's see, it was February 20th of 2019, our commitment for $20,000 for daily operations of the senior center, including staff, lighting, and any other needs they have there. With the help of the city, the senior center right now is giving away more than 150 meals a week to members, all done by volunteers. And thank you very much to the city of Lake Stevens for helping to make that happen. The senior center is doing what they can to help vulnerable seniors through these challenging times. I hope we will do all we can to provide the additional $20,000 that we promised them back in February of 2019. Now, there's just one more thing I want to talk about. There are so many citizens rising to the occasion in Lake Stevens. We hear about them all the time, don't we? I would like to give a shout out to one local woman who has gone above and beyond. Her name is Kathy Benson. A seamstress by profession, she decided to make masks to sell in support of the Lake Stevens Food Bank. Since the beginning of her project, Kathy Benson has sold well over 800 masks and is still making them. Because of her, the Lake Stevens Food Bank has received more than $4,000. So this is a shout out to Kathy Benson. And I know each one of you has somebody in your world that is really shining through this hard time. I wanted to be sure to recognize her.
Everything, Mary?
That's it.
Great. I'll go to Councilmember Daughtry.
I really don't have anything to add to anything tonight, so.
Great. I will go to the next number, Councilmember Jorstad.
Good evening. Just really quick, want to remind everyone that tomorrow is the last day of our farmers market. It's supposed to be a gorgeous day. Please, if you can, get out and support the vendors in our beautiful market and hang out in North Cove Park. Thanks.
Councilmember Frederick.
Good evening, everyone. I will start with COVID and then kind of get a little bit outside of Lake Stevens and talk about farms. But I do want to talk about COVID because it's a team effort. And if you have been to anywhere where any of that information is posted, all of the numbers are trending in a great direction. And that the only way that happens is with everyone working together. So, you know, my shout out is to all of the community of Lake Stevens, everyone involved as responders, everyone doing their part to make sure that we get this thing under wraps and eventually can continue to move the county forward so we can get back to business, open everything up, and get back to normalcy as soon as possible. So I want to say thank you to everyone in that. In recent weeks, I've had the opportunity to meet with our local farmers, and I just want to say that they have a bunch of amazing activities, and they are going to be working to open up for a lot of their normal seasonal events. So if you have the opportunity to partake in those, they've put a lot of work in to make sure people can be safe. So I just want to make sure that people know that those activities are happening. That was very recently something put out and allowed through the governor's guidelines in the past week. So stay on the lookout, stay in touch with those things, and make sure that we support all of our business enterprises and activities, not just here in Lake Stevens, but across Snohomish County.
Great. Councilmember Peter Sagan.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Ewing.
I had a few things. I just wanted to echo what has been said previously. We had the interview for the salary board, and we had some extraordinary candidates. In fact, the consensus among the panel members that any of the 6 would have been solid candidates for the positions that were available. So I'm grateful to the citizens who have been responsive and such great people that are willing to participate. Also, want to remind people that next week, September, is Suicide Awareness Month, and want to thank Wendy from the Health District who provided information to the city and has made that information available through Dawn, our PR person, for that important Awareness Month. I also like to, in light of some changes that have been made in response to COVID, a thank you to Governor Inslee for the adjustments that he has made to the public services for funerals and such on Saturday. And also just want to recognize Mayor Gailey for being aware of Child Cancer Awareness Month. 2 weeks ago tonight, Nathan Lastly passed away from cancer. He was 3 years old. Because of Governor Inslee, we were able to participate in a funeral service for him and his family. And it was a special occasion. And without the thoughtfulness and compassion and guidance of our governor, that would not have happened. So I just want to recognize his efforts and the efforts of all the citizens who helped to make that happen. Thank you.
Great, thank you. For me, very little report. Went to the farmer's market last week just to go see what was going on. The market's really evolving. I think it's a great thing for our community. And like it was mentioned earlier, I think there's 1 week left. So get out there and support that farmer's market. A lot of construction going on. Just want to give a shout out to Eric Durpros and his crew. A lot of great work going on out there. I sat and chatted with a couple and it was great work. And then finally for me, I've chatted with several people from the community who've got one of the grants from our city. And they can't stop thanking us enough for how quickly that got out, because they talked to other people in other communities and it just didn't happen as fast. And they were really happy that we sped that money to them. And once again, they just want to try to find ways to give back and say thank you to the community for everything that happened with that. So that's it for me. Mayor, back to you.
Great reports. Mary, make sure you give Miss Benson a accolade for me. Good stuff going on in the city. I just want to do a quick couple of notes, but first of all, I would like to recognize this Childhood Cancer Awareness Month proclamation, and I'd like to go ahead and read it. I as well was able to attend the funeral of Nathan Lastly. Just a tragic situation for a great family in our community. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and then I think we'll go ahead and just do a vote on it after that, and that way we can all express our support of this proclamation. So it says, whereas pediatric cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children, and whereas 1 in 285 children in the United States will be diagnosed by their 20th birthday, and whereas 80% of childhood cancer cases are diagnosed only after the disease has metastasized and spread to other parts of the body, and whereas 2/3 of childhood cancer patients will have long-lasting chronic conditions as a result of the treatment they go through, and whereas there has been a 24% increase in pediatric cancer cases over the last 40 years, equal to 43 children per day, or 15,780 children a year diagnosed with cancer in the United States. And whereas the National Cancer Institute recognizes the unique research needs of childhood cancer and increased funding to conduct this research, and whereas researchers and healthcare professionals work diligently to dedicate their expertise to treat and cure children with cancer, and whereas too many children are affected by this deadly disease, more must be done to raise awareness and find a cure for all childhood cancers. Whereas I, Brett Gailey, Mayor of the City of Lake Stevens, do hereby declare September 2020 to be Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And in Lake Stevens, and I encourage all people in our city to join in this special observance. Can I get a motion to pass this proclamation?
Move to approve the proclamation.
I'll second the motion.
Great, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Thank you very much, Council. I think it's very important. I know cancer is it's a tragic situation. I know that our medicines are great these days, but unfortunately, sometimes not great enough. Okay, with that, some other comments I have for tonight. The staff is in the middle of a budget process. So if they don't get back to you immediately, it's because they're working on the budget. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been able to meet with several developers. I know that there's some concerns about the economy and where it's going. And I'll tell you this, from meeting from several developers over the last couple of weeks, I'm not hearing it from them. They are very eager to get into our community and do some building. Specifically, we have some folks interested in a couple projects downtown Lake Stevens, as well as a couple projects up at Frontier Village, which is great. So more to come on those things. As you know, I've been working on the broadband situation in Lake Stevens so that we can make sure our kids who are at home are getting good broadband. And we were going through a study with Ziply, and they came back to us yesterday with a great optimistic email. They would like to put a significant amount of money into our infrastructure and to upgrade their system. And then what we will also do is do some matching funds on a grant basis to assist them with a state grant that's out there to upgrade systems as well. So good things are going along with that. We'll be able to upgrade their systems and also create some competition as well to hopefully drive down some prices for the internet. As we all know, we don't have that many providers or choices. I'm having a meeting on Thursday with WSDOT, Mike Cotton, to talk about the projects we have in Lake Stevens. I know that they are still planning on phase 2 of the 9204 project for spring of 2021. And we'll get an update on that on Thursday. I know there's some asking out in the community if Costco is still a thing. Costco is still a thing. We're still working it. We're still planning it. You'll see 91st and 20th Street project happening really soon. That's a supportive project for Costco. So yes, Costco is still a thing. And finally, I would agree, the farmers market has just been a great hit for our city. For those, I live in West Lake Stevens. I've had neighbors for years who didn't even know there was a downtown Lake Stevens. Now they stop me on the sidewalk and say, wow, I didn't know there was a cool little part of the city on the other side of the lake because I went to the farmers market. So it's been a really great, not only economic activity for our city, but also a bonding activity, I think, for our city to enjoy in that great event. I know that Sarah, who runs the farmers market, is planning on providing an economic impact report for us when she's done. And what I'd like to do is have Barb as well marry that up with a study to see what the overall impact, not only from the market itself, but also the downtown businesses and maybe the increase of business that they experienced. I think that'd be a good look to see how well we did on the farmers market. Great. That is all I have for mayor's business. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gene Brazel for the city department report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. The only report we have for you this evening is from Chief Dyer, so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and good evening, council. I just have a couple of brief things I just want to mention. I want to actually give a shout out to a couple of the officers, and I'll make this very brief. The other evening, the officers recovered a stolen vehicle at Tom Thumb at about 2 o'clock in the morning. They started to search the area and found someone they believed that might be a suspect in that. They stopped the person, got a canine from Marysville who tracked from the stolen vehicle to that person. But even with that, that's not enough. That's not probable cause. And so the person was released. But the next evening, the officers went back to Tom Thumb and looked at the video and saw this same person throw something into the dumpster. And so I will tell you, there was some dumpster diving involved, and the officers recovered the keys to that vehicle. So now, and now being able to develop probable cause for that vehicle theft. So good job on that. Another officer, a gentleman who just got his CPL, had an accidental discharge and shot himself in the upper leg. And the officer who arrived first placed a tourniquet on his leg, and the fire crews later said that probably saved his life. So good job for the officer. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that we are now using a program called Spider Tech, and this is run through Snohomish 911. And what it does is provide citizens who call in for calls for service, it provides them with text messages updating them on what's happening. So for instance, if you called in a complaint, they would text you to tell you that an officer has been dispatched. They would text you to tell you that maybe the officer has been delayed, but we'll get right back to you. If the case is turned over to detectives, you'll get a text message, so they just basically text people just to keep them updated on what's going with the case. And secondly, the people are invited to do a small survey after the case, and where they're asked about how their service was for the police department. It also asks them what their main concerns are in their neighborhood. So over time, that'll give us a lot of valuable information. And one of the questions is, did you find these text messages valuable? And I want to say 98% of the respondents so far have said they found it very valuable just to keep them updated. And just lastly, I want to shout out really goes to the council on this one, reference the health department in providing the per capita contributions to the health department. One of the benefits is the health department will provide Narcan for our police department instead of us having to purchase it. And I can tell you that we use that on a very regular basis. So thank you for that. And that's all.
Okay, Gene, anybody else?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Then
Mayor, I got a question.
Sure.
For Chief Dyer. Chief, I don't want an answer right now, but could you please work up a report on how often we're using Narcan, how many times we've had to use that?
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, I understand that it's a great thing to have, but it's still a little disturbing that it sounds like we're using it more often than we had been in the past. So I'd kind of like to have an update on what's going on.
And yeah, I can get that information pretty easily. I'll do that.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Daughtry, I know I was listening in on a meeting today, and I'm not sure if Sean was in on it or not, but I know that their opioid overdoses are higher than they were this time last year. So,
you think they're attributing that to the problems with COVID?
They didn't attribute to anything. They didn't say that. So I don't know.
It is too early to collect a lot of that data. Unfortunately, some of those determinations really trail by months or more the
Oh,
actual.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, great. So let's go to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Great. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted and a second. Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing none opposed, consent agenda passes. And we'll move on to, we're calling this a public hearing, but I think it's going to be not necessarily that. Is that correct, Russ?
No, I'll explain it. So yes, we are going to hold a public hearing tonight. Unfortunately, as described in the staff report, there was some additional information that Snohomish County needed, so they couldn't certify the petitions prior to the public hearing. So we'll just need to hold the public hearing open. You can take testimony tonight, have a discussion, but hold it open. And the only action we'll be asking for is just that you recognize the updated exhibits and the resolution you passed previously.
Okay, perfect. Then let's go ahead with this Machias Industrial Annexation, Russ.
Great. Thank you, Council. So several years ago, as you know, Council set out a strategy to work towards annexation around the lake. We've been able to complete a few annexations to date. This annexation actually started in 2017, and I will say it's been a bit of a slow go, working with the different property owners out there, getting them to more certainty about the city, the annexation, what can be done in this industrial area, how it compares to the county, etc. As you can see, we held a couple of public meetings back in 2017, and then we've had ongoing discussions with the different property owners since that time. To date, we now have a petition that encompasses 60% of the area by valuation. And so the next step in the process is this public hearing where council can decide, how you want to move forward. As part of the public hearing, things we've talked about in the past is this area will come in with the heavy industrial, the general industrial zoning and comp plan designation that's consistent with the current county designation to allow these properties to be open for manufacturing and intensive retail type uses. The next steps in the process would be going to the Boundary Review Board after getting the certification from Snohomish County Assessor's Office. And that leads to the council. You have the draft ordinance tonight, and at a point in the future, you can take action on that ordinance and then annex the city after the Boundary Review Board has had an opportunity. So it's a 67 acre annexation. You've already heard that it's in the industrial area off Machias, and this is petition driven, which means the petitioners are from that community and would like to annex. And upon annexation, the city would take on any indebtedness in the area. With that, I'm happy to address any other comments or questions that the council may have tonight.
This is Angie. I have a quick question just about your last comment, Russ, when you said that the city would take on the indebtedness of the area. Do we have any sense that what that might look like?
I have not heard from our finance that there's any outstanding bonds or debt that we would be taking on, but it is something in the RCW that we do have to address if and when those circumstances do come up.
And would that be information that we would have prior to a vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
Russ?
Yes.
I just, do we have a sense of what it is that they would like to do in that land? all that acreage? I did go look at it. It's quite a lot of acreage there.
At this
Do you have a
point,
sense of that?
yes, so the largest area, which is about 50% of the petition, they want to just continue the businesses that they have going with the ability to expand in the future. The other person that's participating would like to do sort of a multi-use facility that could have some storage, some small shop area for tenants and things like that, manufacturing type tenants.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Do we have any other comments or questions for staff? Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for public comments from the audience on this subject. And if you have a public comment, raise your hand, or I will unmute everybody. And if you want to say your first name, you can say so and I'll recognize you. I am not seeing any hands nor hearing anybody. Okay, so with that, I think, but we're going to leave this public comments open. Is that correct? Or Ms. Huxford, did you have something?
I was hoping not to speak, but I have a couple questions. And I don't have any skin in this game because we sit outside of this. When Director Wright was making his comments, it's not light industrial as we are in Hartford. Is that correct? So I would ask about the zoning.
Yeah, so Ms. Janice, so in the public hearing, we won't answer the questions.
Okay, so that would be one question. So differentiation there. The other question would be, because we are in light industrial, and if this is light industrial, then this becomes more pot production. So I would be curious to see what's going in, because the areas around us now are solely, almost now, to a large extent, either pot production or our retail center in Lake Stevens. So that would be a second question. And then the third question would be, well, third and fourth. So this was generated by the developer rather than city. So there has to be some sort of reason that those areas would be, that this would be annexed in. And the fourth would be, what infrastructure is the city willing to do to help with that? If this is going to continue to grow, and I'm not opposed, I'm asking all these questions off the cuff, but if that area is going to continue to grow, what is being done to help with the infrastructure there? Because we're adding layer upon layer upon layer of businesses that are holding on and have had decisions made to surround us with what we have there now. And I would hope that there's some sort of vision that would be something that would be revenue generating. That would be an area that would be a place where we would want to bring in tenants, where we would want to have people be there. So those are my comments tonight for the council, and they can ponder those as they continue to discuss. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes,
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment.
Oh, great, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Russ's comment. The appropriate thing to do tonight is to continue the public hearing to a date certain, sometime after when we expect the county to have certified the petition, and maybe Russ can provide some comment on that as to when he expects that to happen. And then let's choose a date, a council meeting. If for some reason it's not ready yet, we can go ahead and continue it. But by continuing tonight, we don't need to republish and meet the notice requirements.
Okay. Gary.
Yes, question for Director Wright. There's 3 other areas that are kind of in this north quadrant up here. Is there any activity regarding the annexation potential on those other 3?
The other areas in the northern part of the city, we were going to take up probably next year and re-engage those folks in those areas.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Are we done with the public comment portion of this then?
Let me ask again, and then I'll close that, and then we'll go to further questions. Any other comments for the public from the audience? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comments portion of the hearing. Are there any other?
So you're going to continue it? Are you going to continue it?
We're
Per
going to
Greg's suggestion.
Correct. We'll do that.
Okay, I thought I heard you say closed.
I think he's just closing the comment section for tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
And with that, any other comments by staff or questions for staff?
So if we're looking at a continuation date, Mayor, we could tentatively put in September 8th or September 22nd. I intend to get the revised materials to the Snohomish County Assessor's Office tomorrow, and they'll probably take at least a week. So the soonest would be the 8th, and then the next regular meeting would be the 22nd. So if council has a preference, we can just pencil that in right now.
Okay, so I think what we need then is a motion to continue this to a date certain.
A motion to continue the hearing until October 8th, 2020.
September, please.
September 8th.
Oh, September, sorry. September 8th.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to continue the public hearing to September 8th, 2020. And I have a second. Do I have any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And that passes, continuous passes. So with that, we'll go to action items, which is J, ordinance 1093, reference full-time mayor. Gene.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This came before Council on July 14th, 2020 for the first time. They formed a subcommittee. The subcommittee met and discussed their recommendation with the full council on August 11th. At that time, it was requested that public comment be received. The city staff put together a process for doing so, and we received some public comment that was emailed out to the council members this afternoon, along with information on going out to a ballot measure on this, the cost of putting something on a ballot, and the timeline. In the packet, there is a ordinance approving a change to the municipal code, supporting a full-time mayor for your consideration.
Okay. And with that, so to open up discussion, we'll need a motion on the floor.
Motion to open discussion on ordinance 1093 regarding the full-time mayor position.
Second.
Second.
So Councilmember Ewing, it's actually a motion. It would be a motion to whatever you want to do with the ordinance, and then we would open up discussion after the motion.
Okay, so let me amend that motion. Make a motion to approve ordinance 1093 as written.
Approve.
Okay,
Second.
Here, let's go clean on this. So Councilmember Ewing, let's rescind both of those because you amended your first one that wasn't correct. So I need you to rescind both of them, start over.
All right, hopefully strike 3 doesn't happen. I strike out. So I'm going to rescind my previous two motions and try a cleaner motion this time. So I move to approve ordinance 1093.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor to approve ordinance 1093 and a second, and I'll open the floor for discussion. Ms. Dickinson, or Councilmember Dickinson.
That's all right. I haven't been missed for a long time. Apologize for reading this. First of all, I want to recognize all the hard work the mayor and our amazing city staff have put in these past 8 months that I've been on council. Considering the challenges of governing during a pandemic, it has been laud-worthy. Also, I thank the IT department for providing a way for some input from the community. As our city is growing by leaps and bounds, do I think we should have a full-time mayor? I do. But that for me is not the question. One question is this the right time for such a change? We cannot debate or discuss this topic with the citizens in a town hall. We cannot give full considerations to what the citizens want at all, actually. My second question is, with the county executive warning of more cuts and with thousands still waiting for unemployment and other funding ending for so many, is this the right time for such a new expense? Plus the need for more staff combined with the fact that Costco is still a ways off leaves our financial health challenged. Although I think we're doing pretty well generally. So in the end, would it not be better, more transparent, more pragmatic to allow the citizens to vote for this change? So many of our residents are overwhelmed right now with kids at home, job insecurity, ailing parents. Are they even aware that this issue's on the table? And so I say, please let us put it to a vote for the people to decide. So for now, I must vote no on putting this forward at this time. And it does not reflect on the good work that's being done at all. It just seems to be pragmatic for me. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Frederick.
Thank you, Mayor. I jotted some notes just because I'm a bit scatterbrained, so bear with me. I want to echo some of the comments that Councilmember Dickinson made just previously, but I want to go back to some of the initial conversations, and we really started talking about the great work that was done by Mayor Spencer, the great work that's been continued by Mayor Galey. I think that's separate. That's a separate conversation than the issue of the full-time mayor. What we're really talking about on the one hand, and I think the most imminent, is how do we properly compensate a mayor regardless of the amount of time that he's working? We have part-time employees in the city already. There's already a mechanism in place if they work 40 hours as opposed to 30 or 35. There's a method for them to be compensated appropriately. So I think that that is an issue that should obviously be addressed. If the mayor is working full-time already in a mayoral position, he needs to be compensated in that term, in that manner. There are some concerns there as well with that increased compensation. In recent months, we have reclassified several positions. We have made some pay increases to other positions, and those positions alone have increased our salary expenses by around $100,000 in the coming year. If we go to a full-time mayor now, not only are those increases, are we going to see increases in the expenses in that regard in 2020, but we're potentially going to see another increase somewhere around the area of $100,000 in 2021. And with those $200,000 in increases, we've done nothing to close any of the other open positions that increase our capacity to do the staff level work to continue to keep the city moving forward. So that's a concern. I fully agree that we should have a full-time mayor. I want to be clear about that. I am somewhat concerned about the impacts of Boeing regionally to our economy because of COVID, those things that aren't known. We are moving towards Costco, and we know that there are expected impacts that will positively benefit the city, but we're not there yet. So those are definitely concerns. That being said, the city is growing, and I definitely want to support a full-time mayor. One of my concerns is the people elected a part-time mayor. And we were all elected into our position and our roles as they are. What I would ask is that we consider moving forward with a full-time mayor, potentially on the 2021 election ballot. There are costs associated with that unless we move forward with the general election. However, even in that case, there is time for staff, council, mayor to truly understand all of the impacts, all of the financial impacts of the decisions we've already made, plus this one, and have a plan not only to step forward smartly with a full-time mayor, but actually be able to address all of the costs we've taken on with the ability to close the gap in the FTEs that we haven't fulfilled yet and really set the city moving forward in a new direction. So that's what I would say.
Councilmember Daughtry?
These are all valid concerns. I share those concerns, but I come at this from a different perspective. We have been in a position to need a full-time mayor for years, ever since, well, not quite ever since I've been on the council, but almost ever since I've been on the council. We've talked about it. We've always put it off. And we have not gotten our fair share of some of the things that happened in the region because we do not have a full-time mayor that is out there beating the bushes to get those things to come our way. I have been in a position within the county and within the region on several different boards and commissions and watched how those things are dealt with in the political realm of the region, and how the full-time mayors are always getting the biggest portion of what's going on, and Lake Stevens always being behind. And I know that if they had a full-time mayor, that would change, especially if the mayor gets out there and gets involved in those boards and those commissions, the PSRC especially, and those kinds of things, which is what most of the mayors are doing. There are a few council people that are out there doing the same thing. I have been included in that realm of people. However, it's not as effective as the mayor doing it. It just isn't. I've watched it, I know it, and I've tried to fight it, and it just doesn't work. The mayors are always the ones that people are looking at. And so even if we do have a little bit of non-clarity on our financial status at this time, I foresee that we would actually gain by having a full-time mayor more than what we would lose in the interim. And that is because he's out there, or would be out there as a full-time anybody, not just Brett, but a full-time mayor would be out there getting the other jurisdictions to understand our needs, and probably winning a lot more of the grants and a lot more of the accolades that we need as a city to move forward. I think that even though it's unknown of what those are, it's also unknown of what everybody else is speaking of, that this is not the time. The other thing that is bothering me as a trend is that we continue to talk about transparency and going to the voters and putting everything up for a vote all the time. We're a representative government. We were voted into our positions to do this. With taking public comment and understanding what our constituents are asking of us, we are supposed to take that, make a decision and move forward. Trying to take everything to the ballot. Why do we have a representative government? Why don't we just take everything to the ballot? It's just a disturbing trend that I'm hearing in the last 4 or 5 years. It's too costly to go to the ballot for everything. Everybody knows that. This isn't really a ballot issue. We know what the citizens are talking about. I have heard several people, a lot more than the negative about it, the more we need a full-time mayor now. We're way past the time needing a full-time mayor. I'm going to vote yes. I seconded the motion. I will put on record that I have seconded motions before that I have voted down, but I seconded the motion and I intend on voting for a full-time mayor at this time.
Councilmember Jurstad.
Thank you. I'm in a sort of a tricky position tonight, honestly, and Councilman Daughtry, I appreciate you bringing forth this notion regarding putting things to a ballot versus being a representative government. I think because that's kind of what's creating the tricky situation. I was really honored to be a part of the subcommittee that had discussions around moving this forward. I felt like Councilman Peters Hagen and Councilman Ewing and I asked some really good questions. I think we were pretty transparent in sharing our hesitation, sharing our concerns, asking city staff for information that we felt like we needed to make the best recommendation moving forward. I won't speak for either of them, but I think that, in that room with the information we had, we came to a place where we felt good recommending moving forward. And I think our discussion that we had a few weeks ago was good. I really appreciated Mary, Councilwoman Dickinson, suggesting that we open this up to the public. And I think that's where, for me, things got interesting. I was approached by multiple folks within our community, several business owners, folks that had seen that this was up for conversation and movement tonight. And I read through all of the public comment that we had a chance to read through before tonight. I listened intently to the folks that spoke this evening. My experience, Councilman Daughtry, was quite different than yours in that I was sort of overwhelmed with questions about why we would consider this now. Why in the midst of a pandemic and in the midst of this economic uncertainty would we consider this now? Why wouldn't we, consider all of the options, not just voting yes or no tonight, but consider putting it to a vote. Consider looking to see financially where we sit 3 months from now, even. There were comments about this feeling sort of rushed and that this wasn't something that felt well. There were concerns about transparency and why this was happening so quickly. So I engaged in those conversations. I think was exposed to some ideas that the three of us weren't exposed to when we were sitting with city staff looking at it from that point of view. And I'm taking everything in and I appreciate all the information. I am not feeling as certain as I was 2 weeks ago about moving forward at this time. I want to echo what Councilman Frederick said. I absolutely think this city is moving towards needing a full-time mayor. I am concerned about this being the time for that to happen. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other discussion?
I got, if no one else can comment, I just wanted to say I was also part of the committee and grateful to be a part of that. And some really good concerns were brought. And I think a couple points helped. The focus was what's in the best interest of the city. And that came up repeatedly. It came from our city attorney. and others, and hear comments, especially from former council members. I count at least three: Sam Lowe, Rochelle McDaniel, and Todd Welch, that said, "Hey, this has been a topic for a long time and should have happened a long time ago." And so I was really appreciative of Councilmember Jorstad's thoughtful comments and questions, and she helped allay some of my concerns that I had and helped me feel more comfortable moving forward in support of this. So I'm grateful for her, and also Councilmember Peter Shaken and their comments. So I guess when it comes down to, I support or agree with some of the concerns that were shared, but I think Councilmember Daughtry is more articulate than I am, and really his comments really resonated with me. We, without public input, with very little comment, with very little thought, approved $80,000 in salary adjustments for 3 positions. So if we want to follow that same argument that some other people are saying, well, the person knew what they got when they get into, tell the HR person you knew what your salary range was, what your position was when you got there, why are you asking for money now? Well, because she's performing work that's outside that. Tell the police chief, hey, you know what? Let's have you move on to another agency because you're not being compensated fairly. Tell our city administrator, hey, you're not being, so I think as a council, we made the right decision, a difficult one, even among the pandemic and the uncertainty, to retain three people. And it wasn't about the people, necessarily about the position and the work that's being done. So I'm grateful for the thoughts and the input of the many community members. And I think that I just want to note that I was concerned about one of the comments on there was from someone who's no longer part of the city, has moved most of the way across the country. Some seem like they were personal attacks instead of thoughtful deliberation about the merits of what's going on. So it's about what's in the best interest of the city, what's going to help move the city forward. As noted by our folks, our revenues are ahead, if I'm not mistaken, of where they were last year. So even during the economic downturn, we've been immune to that, in part due to some excellent budgeting on the part of our city staff. So I'm looking forward to casting a vote tonight on this issue.
I'd like to make a comment or two. First and foremost, I think it's time to put a mayor into play. I think it's a time we've talked about in the past. John Spencer acted that way. I will disagree. I don't think Mayor Vernon Little did very little as a full-time mayor. So that to me doesn't play. What I would say is this has moved really fast for me. We have a council retreat coming up in September. I think this is a perfect time for us as a council to take a little time to go over this and just make sure we look at the budget impacts, look at all the different things that we need as requirements. Do we need a full-time mayor? Yes. I think Brett's been doing a great job. And I think just with a little bit more public comment and a little bit more just planning and making sure we're on the same page as to what the budget impacts are, and a little bit more time to see where we fall as a community with COVID and everything. I'm there. I just want a little bit more time to process, get a little bit more input, and see how after our retreat, look at some budget, look at a little bit better information. I want to make a good decision off good information. And I feel like there's some still good information out there to be gathered. And as soon as I have that, I'll be prepared to make a decision to move one way or the other.
I sincerely appreciate everyone's comments, because a lot of these comments and questions were brought up in our subcommittee that we had on 2 occasions. So I think they're all valid, and I've been wrestling with this myself. I guess there's 2 sides to this. Is it an investment or is it an expenditure? And I'm looking at some things here that indicate that, and we've seen that so far, that we are somewhat immune to the economic impact of the COVID situation. But when we ask our finance director to give us a budget impact, right at the bottom of the staff report, it indicates that we're talking about hitting 10% reserve line in early 2026 as opposed to mid 2026. So we're really splitting some hairs here, and I think it comes down to an issue of, do we make that jump and invest, or do we just chalk it up to an expenditure? And I think it's time. We do have a pending annexation that's in the works that's going to add about 6,000 to 7,000 people to this city shortly. We have WashDOT issues that are going to be impacting this city finally, and I guess hopefully in the next year to year and a half. We have other issues that a full-time mayor can certainly attend to with both feet in versus maybe a half foot or a foot in. So I consider this as a step moving forward. When you look at our adjacent sister cities, I guess you might say, comparable type cities, they're all there already. So I kind of consider this an investment, and the return on that investment, I think, would be well worth it. So I would support it at this point. I don't know what other information we're going to bring forward in the next 3 weeks for our retreat. You know, we could have this same discussion in December, January, February, March, whatever. As far as the ballot issue, I agree with Councilmember Daughtry. I think the people elected us to do these adjustments, I guess you might call them, and do what's best for the city. So I think a ballot measure would get into the weeds quite a bit, into the minutia, and I think it would be rather confusing to a lot of folks. I myself, having sat on this subcommittee, talked to numerous folks, my constituents, I guess you might say, and overwhelming were supportive of a full-time mayor. So I will support this. Thank you.
I just want to go on the record to say I'm not necessarily concerned about a special election with this, but whenever you make an investment, you look at all the facts and everything that concerns it when you're making an investment. And I agree wholeheartedly that this is an investment into our city. We've got a lot of moving parts. We've got a lot of stuff going on, but before I make an investment, I make sure I know everything there is to know about the situation. We just got out of a month and a half being off. I think there's a lot of people who want to give a little bit of input. We had people tonight, a lot of great input from business owners. For me, I just think there's just a little bit of time just to make sure that we're making a good decision. This is something that is going to be moving forward for the next 3 years, and it's going to continue to moving forward for whoever knows how long. So before I make a decision like that, I'd like to have a little bit more information surrounding something that's probably for the next way Lake Stevens is going to move forward from here on out. Is it time? Absolutely. I just want to know the details, what the mayor's position is going to be, what kind of benchmarkers we're doing, what things we're going to be looking for, and just to know what everyone's asking for is, what is it that we need? So a little bit more of information is all I'm looking for here, and then I will be able to make a decision. I'm not looking for a special election, but I do need just a little more time to, be informed and to make sure that the public has had a lot of time to give us some input. Just a little more input and I'll be there. But for right now, I just need a little bit more. I'm hoping the retreat will provide some of that information for us. And there's a lot of projects, a lot of moving parts. Once again, I just need to put my arms around it. Thanks.
Well, we do need a true budget impact. The chart that was provided as part of the staff report actually is only the mayor's position isolated. So it doesn't take into effect, or it doesn't take into account any of the other position changes that we've made over recent months. It only reflects the mayoral position. So it really doesn't give us a holistic view of the decisions we've made and the impacts it has on the budget moving downstream. Now, I'm not saying that has some significant input on when we eventually hit that 10% threshold, but we should know. And I think a little bit more time to actually do that work and get those accurate numbers. I think it's important that we do that. In fact, that was my specific question last month, and I asked again this week in preparation for this meeting.
I would like to suggest, and Mayor or Council President, please let me know if this needs to be in the form of a motion, that we postpone action on this resolution this evening until the first meeting after our retreat. Our retreat is in 4.5 weeks on September 25th. The next meeting would be Tuesday, October 13th.
We can't.
There is
we
a
can't
motion
propose
and
that.
a
There's been a
second on the, there's a motion and a second on the table. We need to at least go through the motions.
Yeah.
There could be a motion made to table that if it's seconded, you could then vote on that motion, even though, because the motion would be to table the pending motion on the that's on the floor to whatever meeting date is set into the into motion. But that procedurally, that's an appropriate motion.
Thank you, Greg. I would like to make a motion that we table the resolution until our meeting on October 13th.
Second.
That's a non-debatable motion, so it just goes to a vote.
It just goes to a vote, correct? So I have a motion to table the ordinance, to table the motion on the table, and a second of that. If I could get a roll call vote on that, Kelly?
Yes. Councilmember Daughtry,
Nay.
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
No.
Councilmember Frederick,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorstad,
Yes.
Councilmember Ewing,
Nay.
Councilmember Paget.
Aye.
Okay, so that motion to table the ordinance passes, and we will move on to discussion items. Okay, budget amendment, please. Is Barb going to do that, Jean, or?
That's me.
Oh,
As
there you
soon
are.
as I have, if you could give me control so I can share my screen, I will walk through the budget amendment presentation.
You should have controls as of now.
Okay. Are you seeing my presentation? Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So to take a look at our 2020 budget amendment, this is number 2. Normally we do this a lot earlier in the year, but with COVID, we were kind of unsure of a lot of things. We let a lot of things occur through council meetings that I'm bringing back now. So looking at, this is a budget amendment by fund. So these are all the funds that are actually being affected by this second budget amendment. There are a few things that occurred in the beginning fund balance that normally doesn't happen in budget amendments other than the first one. Normally we just roll forward the beginning fund balances, but there were a number of things that we had to move around after the fact. I'll kind of go through a couple of those a little bit later. Some of them had to do with BARS fund coding changes and GASB requirements, and a couple of them had to do with some billing mistakes by Snohomish County, whether it was Cavallero Park or 79th Avenue, whether it was coming out of street or park mitigation. So there was a few of those things that kind of occurred behind the scenes to actually change beginning fund balances. So this just shows you some of the things that we've changed. General funds, General fund, remember, includes the general reserve fund as well as the permit fund. So any changes that occur in those funds, which will include some COVID related expenditures, that's where the small business grants come in. That's where the lunch program comes in, and some of our specialty equipment are coming out of that fund. So that is a large portion of the expenditure change in that fund, as well as the revenue change. We have it coming all into general fund, and then we'll allocate it out based on our expenditures as we go through. So some of the other ones we have in here include a capital project developer contribution fund. That's the traffic mitigation. 304 capital improvements, that's real estate excise tax 2. I know they're not really clear by the title sometimes. Developer or downtown redevelopment, that's our North Cove Park. We actually just moved the grant funds and the expenditures into a different fund. So there's a lot of allocations moving around and not a whole lot of changes based on what we're doing. So this is looking at a summary of the amendment. I try and give you what occurred during the original budget, and then what happened in budget amendment 1, and then now budget amendment 2. As you can see, all of the changes in the beginning fund balance is actually balanced to 0. So it was just moving around beginning fund balances. So there was no overall change in the beginning fund balances, just correcting entries. Some of the revenues that we're seeing include adding in the Davies Beach parking fees. We didn't actually have those budgeted when we took it over. We actually took it over in April. So we have included those. The Vector equipment bond proceeds. So when we actually went out and we got the local funding from the treasurer's office, we had to actually add that in as a budget amendment for the proceeds and the expenditures. We'll also show the expenditure for the annual fee for that as well, the annual payment. And then, as I mentioned, we have the CARES and FEMA grants. One thing on the FEMA grants, we were actually just notified yesterday that they might be limiting the things that they reimburse even further. It might be down to just EOC and specific public safety and medical. So we do have a reimbursement request in right now for some of our PPEs and some of our disinfection that is actually on hold. So it's on hold until FEMA determines what they're actually going to be reimbursing us for. So some of those costs that we actually put in for reimbursement for might be rolling in back into the CARES Act funding. So we're kind of tracking that right now. And then we did get a veterans grant for the Veterans Commission. They used it for Safeway gift cards. So that came from, and I have it in there, the Woodruff Foundation, Bob Woodruff Foundation reached out and offered a veterans grant to them. So they did accept that. And then we have a WCIA grant for police department fencing for safety, public safety. And then we have a lot of interfund transfers, reallocation, changes in grant funding. That's when a project comes in either higher or lower, and we're able to adjust the grant to that. If it comes in lower, they force us to adjust the grant down. If it comes in higher, sometimes we can get more grant funding. So that's what we have in some of the funds. And then expenditures, we have the COVID-related small business grants, senior center lunch program, some capital projects. As I mentioned, you know, sometimes when we accept the bids, they're higher than we had anticipated. Final project costs and add-ons, and then again, the Vector purchase. So I did put this in your packet with all of the detail, and I do have it by project, or at least sort of categorized together. So some of the operating things we have in here are kind of moving things around. Police department wanted more to contribute more into their taser replacement fund. We were able to remove that from a different fund to transfer it into that fund. And so it's actually just a reallocation of budget funding. It's not actually adding any funding. We're just moving the money now. So now we have to show an additional expenditure and the revenue. As you mentioned, the salary changes. I will say that the majority of the salary changes that have occurred are being absorbed this year. They will affect the future year's budgets and the future forecasts, but as for the 2020 budget, they're just being absorbed into the funds and into the departments. And that occurs when we have less expenditures. We have delayed hiring, whether intentionally or not. We have some delayed hiring going on, whether it was intentional. Good could affect that. So we do have some funding left over, some budget left over that we intend to just absorb some of that. That's why you don't see a lot of those changes in here. Admin salary, you do see that because the admin budget is so small. There's no way to absorb that into that. So we do have the contribution to the health district and some legal fees that we're looking at, and some the professional services for the sewer district when we're taking a look at the sewer district and we're contributing to that that survey and that contract. Then the next is the COVID. As I mentioned, this does not budget for all of the expenditures for COVID, as we do have some that are already included into the system. The next is storm drainage charges. That's just reallocation of charges for city-owned properties. And so we have to determine which funds and which departments those come out of, which our properties come out of, and pay ourselves for stormwater fees. The next, I mentioned the Veterans Private Grant. And then the retainage, this one, as I mentioned, this is regarding BARS code changes and GASB requirements. We had to eliminate the retainage trust fund and move all of the expenditures and revenues into actual where the expenditures are coming from. So that's just a requirement by the state at this point. We move into the capital amendment detail. As I mentioned, the Caballero Park 79th, we were billed incorrectly. We were actually billed for the, they had told us it was for the 79th. It's not for 79th. It was actually for Caballero. So we need to change a few of those. That's one of those beginning fund balance changes that we had to do too. South Lake Stevens Road, there was final project costs regarding the overlay and the payment that came to council earlier this year. Looking at the TIB 20th Street, as I mentioned, those bids came in reduced, and so we actually get a reduced grant. So that just changes those costs. North Cove 2, we do have that $1 million grant. We're actually moving it from one fund into another to actually track it a little easier. And also, we learned that the state actually keeps 2% of that. So we've actually decreased the revenues from 1 million to 980,000. We also got the bids in for that, which I believe council approved last meeting. And so we've actually put in the budget for that coming out of the park mitigation funds. We have the War Memorial. That one obviously was approved by council back in February. And then we have the Vector truck, as I mentioned. This is taking into consideration the revenues as well as the expenditures, moving them from one fund into a different fund and paying the annual premiums. And then the police department grants are a little interesting. We had gotten the bond for the police department. It was just over $9 million, including premiums, and then we had the costs. We then budgeted a certain amount and there was some left over. So we're actually just adding the remaining bond. There is still the $2 million, or the $200,000 budgeted for the old police department. This is actually just taking the remaining of the $9 million bond and putting it into the budget. So it just hadn't been budgeted previously. It was just a smaller amount. So this is adding that budget in there. It's also adding for the interest we've earned off of that bond through this year, as well as a transfer into the art fund, which wasn't budgeted previously. So we're just kind of adding, getting everything in line with what's actually happening in the police department. And the organizational staffing, this was approved earlier tonight, so I went ahead and added it, included it in the budget amendment. The organizational staffing changes in the Public Works Department did add the capital project inspector engineer that was previously approved by council. That funding is to come the majority out of capital project funds. Then we have the Public Works supervisor, which was added. The Public Works crew lead, we went from 2 and adding 1, going to 3. And in the same time, we're reducing the Public Works crew member 2 by 1 and the Public Works crew member 1 by 2. So there are still, after this change, there are still 2 vacant crew worker 1 positions that are not being held open. They're actually going out and attempting to fill those positions. They're just vacant right now. And then there's 2 seasonal crew workers that was reduced. So there was a lot of changes that occurred when council met at the council retreat, and then kind of going back and looking at what the actual department organization needed to be, they made some of these changes through there. And so we actually just reduced the seasonal crew workers by 2, and there are still 2 vacant that they have been attempting to fill. And then, as we mentioned earlier, the reclassifications, the HR specialist, executive assistant is now the senior HR specialist, and the capital project coordinator is capital project manager. And early this year, 1 change occurred in the planning department, and that was to change the planner position to senior planner position, and that has been filled. And that is all I have on the budget amendment. If you have any questions, let me know. This will come back to council in 2 weeks for your final approval on that. And I'm hoping none of this is any surprise to anybody, as most of this has already been come to council and approved during contracts and additional things.
Great report, Barb. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Barb?
This is Angie. I just want to say thanks, Barb. It's helpful. I know that we've seen all of these individually. It's super helpful to have this all in one space and to have this summary so we can really look at the overall impact. So I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to discussion item L, food truck ordinance. Jill, you're up.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Today I am back for yet another briefing on the permanent food truck ordinance this time. Last time I was here, we held a public hearing on June 23rd on the interim ordinance. Since then, we have issued the SEPA, we have sent the draft to Commerce, we've held the public hearing at Planning Commission and briefed them a couple times. The notice of public hearing was circulated to the Herald as required. It was posted on the Facebook, and it was sent to the Lake Stevens Chamber of Commerce as well. So attached is the Planning Commission letter of recommendation, that is Exhibit 1. The draft code is attached as Exhibit 2. It is basically the interim code with deletions and insertions for the proposed permanent ordinance. So insertions are, of course, underlined, deletions are struck out. So the changes are based on suggestions from council, the Planning Commission, the fire department, and public commentary, and I'll go over those changes super quick here. So after the discussion with the fire department, they suggested a few changes so that we can be in compliance with the IFC. Food trucks do pose a slight risk to the public, as an improperly installed propane tank does have the risk to explode. So first, we have formally defined the mobile food preparation vehicle, which is a reference to the IFC. It is important to note that not all mobile food preparation vehicles are considered mobile vending units under our code. The fire department also wishes to review and approve each vehicle, depending on what the type of vehicle and where it was permitted in the past. They may require an inspection as well. But fire approval will also be required for mobile vendors outside of the ordinance and within events. So in the interest of streamlining our permit process, we've removed some application requirements the health district also requires, such as a wastewater treatment plan, proof of labor and industries approval, and a trash can as well, since they already require that. An insurance requirement has also been added, $50,000, $500,000, I should say, for injuries, and $25,000 minimum for damage and public liability insurance. And then the only 2 right-of-ways that are restricted for the PM peak hour is 20th Street Northeast and 20th Street Southeast, both 20th Streets there. We've also renamed the concession agreement to public property use agreement to better reflect the intent. We will also be updating a new form for that. And the minimum distance a vendor may operate from an existing brick and mortar restaurant is now reduced to 150 feet. And I also added some language defining how we would measure this distance. So lastly, we added some language to also restrict mobile vending on state and federal highways. This is kind of a common sense thing since we don't really have jurisdiction over federal highways and state highways anyway, but it's always good to add it. The fees have also been changed. So $75 is now the proposed fee for initial review, and then $50 for each renewal for each year after. And a public hearing has been scheduled tentatively for September 22nd. And so with that, I would like to pass it back off to council for questions and discussion.
Jill, thanks for that presentation. So I realize it may catch you off guard on this. I'm wondering what the update is on the Lake Stevens Brewery and how that's working out for them using the interim ordinance.
Yeah, so they have had probably, I think they're up to 5 different food trucks that they kind of rotate. The area that they use is that right-of-way location right in front of the brewery. And I haven't heard much from them. Each food truck that we have permitted has no trouble usually getting everything together. And they've kind of gotten into the swing of things and they know our application requirements now.
What kind of success are they having? I guess I'd like it to be a positive, financial impact for any of the businesses that are trying to augment what they have.
Yeah, absolutely. I have heard great things from the owner of the brewery, Andrea Dewar, and that oftentimes they have run out of food for their food trucks, and that there's a certain food truck there that has increased their time there to twice a week from once a week. So from what I've been hearing, it's been a huge success for them.
I just want to say from some of the local business owners, restaurants down there, and they feel the impact is minimal at best. And it's nice to see the food trucks finally making an impact down there and helping a local business and giving a little bit more selection, but at the same time, the brick and mortar is still doing well. So that's a thing to hear. I'm looking forward to moving this forward.
Jill, thank you for your presentation. Just a comment and a question. A comment being on your Exhibit 1, it talks about subject planning commission recommendation for flood hazard regulations. I think we were talking about food trucks.
I was using a template for, as you can see. So yes, for the record, that should read food trucks. Sorry about that.
All right. And then just a question for you. Where do you envision food trucks to be located on 20th Street Northeast?
So are you the 20th Street Northeast? Okay, so for right now, it's very residentially zoned, but in discussion with Russ, that is a location that will soon become more commercialized. So we just wanted to put this in there preemptively so that we can kind of.
Well, I don't want to rehash what you've kind of already done, but
right.
Focusing on the future for something that doesn't exist right now, how do you accommodate that? I mean, I within the right of way on 20th Street Northeast, how, I mean, somebody just pulls off the side of the road?
I can handle this one. So thank you for the question. And so the issue is the only commercially zoned property right now in 20th Northeast is right at the intersection of Main and 20th. And we already know that we have issues with the queuing for the gas station and the little restaurant there, and that anything on that arterial with the current configuration isn't going to be able to support a parking lane to have a safe operation of this type of use. So that's why we made the exclusion on both arterials, just because there's not a safe parking lane that they can use. If they're associated with a business, if they have available area in their parking lot, they can certainly do that. We just don't want to see them operating on the right of way because there's not enough right of way to have them safely operate.
But isn't that exclusion only between 4 and 6 p.m.?
Correct. The
So-
prime business hours.
At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a guy could pull over the side of the road and operate.
If they've gone through a process, if council though would like to see that extended and just have it a blanket prohibition, we can definitely put that in. If that's more your concern, that the safety issue doesn't go away, we're just trying to look at it during the prime rush hour.
I would suggest that the safety issue is there consistently, not
Okay.
just 4 and 6 p.m. So
Is there a general consensus from the council? If you agree with Peter Sheginius, please raise your. Great, thank you for that. We'll make that adjustment.
all right, thank you.
Okay, so I have another question. I'm a little bit unclear about the fire department's requirements. It seems to me that all these trucks have been, I don't know, licensed, inspected, all kinds of things from all kinds of entities, and now the fire department needs to do their part. It just doesn't make sense to me that every jurisdiction they go into, they're going to have a fire department inspection. It seems to me that there ought to be an annual inspection that the truck passes and it's done. And I really thought that that's the way it actually worked, talking to some of those truck owners, that they had to go through an annual inspection that came from the county, as far as I understand, and that should cover all bases. I don't understand. I'm perplexed at why that doesn't actually occur.
Yes. So unfortunately, the fire department does agree with you, but it is in the IFC. So we would like to be able to just have to do a quick check. So if a food truck was permitted in, say, another jurisdiction, the fire department would like to just do a quick check. Unfortunately, it's not in the IFC. So unfortunately,
International Fire Code for those of you following along.
Right. So unfortunately, in this version of the IFC, we will have to do a separate check for each jurisdiction that they're in. So they do have to, will be subject to an inspection and an approval. The inspection, that's to the discretion of the fire marshal.
So does that inspection have to happen each time that they are going to open their truck in any of our places, or is it an annual inspection?
So that would be up to the fire marshal.
I believe the
And then
intent is to inspect them upon initial application, and then that they would be certified, whether they get a sticker or something like that, I believe was the fire marshal's intent, not to every time they move to a different location in the city in their annual license to have to get inspected every time.
And the fire marshal stated that intent?
I don't believe in writing. Verbally, that's the conversation, but we can get clarification and bring some assurances back to council.
I would hate to see them getting feed every time, every jurisdiction. It should be, like Kim said, if it's International Fire Code, they should be able to get inspected one time, have a sticker, all the jurisdictions play along. It's almost embarrassing, but that's my take.
And it would be the same thing, isn't it the same thing, Sean? Maybe you can answer this. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you are the Snohomish County Health District. Isn't it the same thing with you? And now I realize that when we do events such as Aquafest or any of the others, and we open up food vendors, that the health district always sends people in to do an inspection. But with those types of vendors, it's a little bit different because they set up differently each time. And so I understand, and I want the health district down there looking at those things, because they give us people that are operating these events a little bit of help with making sure everything's done right. But with a food truck, I can't imagine that it would change. Is there an annual inspection that you do for that, like you do restaurants, or what are you doing? What is the actual what's happening?
Food trucks are inspected annually by the health district. Much like some of this conversation, there is a sticker that gets affixed to each of the vehicles. And that's basically the requirement. That being said, not all food trucks are created equal, and not all food truck operations are treated equal. It gets complicated fairly quick, but to the points that you made, those are very different. Food trucks get an annual inspection. Those temporary food permits for those food vendors that are operating booths, they do get periodic inspections when they do temp events as part of that process.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
By the way, good job, Jill.
I will mention we are running up against the 9 o'clock deadline.
Yeah.
We are. So with that, do we have any other comments or questions for Jill?
Oh, great presentation.
All right, great. Thank you, Jill, very much for that. So we're going to run into citizens' comments. Do we need to do an extension of the time or just run through citizens' comments? What are you going to do, Marcus?
I think we have a 9 o'clock deadline. We always run past this. I think we have 3 minutes left. Let's see what comments are out there.
Okay, perfect. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor to citizens' comments, and I'll look for a hand up or someone saying their first name to be recognized. Go ahead. Hand up or your first name. Anybody? Gary, go ahead. Jerry. I'll unmute. There you go.
I got you. Thanks. I just want to say thank you to council, mayor, and the city of Lake Stevens for what they have done for the senior center. It is greatly appreciated. Kudos to you guys.
Thank you, Jerry.
You bet.
Any other comments for tonight? Say your first name or raise your hand.
Melissa.
Melissa, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Gailey. I really appreciate you guys taking a little bit more time to discuss the issue of a full-time mayor. There's a lot happening in our town, not just with COVID, but we are growing, and I think it's important that you get more info. And I think it's important that you do things in this manner because we're trying to move forward with things like a new library and the Historical Society, and we're trying to make all these changes. And I think it's important for people to have a chance to give you more information, if at all possible. And if you want to put it on a ballot, put it on a ballot. But I do appreciate you taking the time to hear a little bit more of what everyone has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other comments for tonight? Okay, I am not seeing any other comments. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Anyone against? Hearing no one against, I appreciate everyone's time. Have a great night. Please be safe out there.
Good night.
Right.